Darth Sidious, the culmination of the Rule of Two, has many praise for many of the ancient Dark Masters, but the one Sith Lord that is the most powerful, the closest to Darth Sidious's own power, and what many believe eclipses Sidious's own power in Vitiate, Palpatine mysteriously has very little to say about the Dark Lord, one who came the closest to dominating the entire galaxy. So why was this? Why did Palpatine not respect Vitiate or Valkorion? And how was it that potentially the most powerful Sith to have ever lived was held in contempt by Palpatine? Greetings again, Acolytes, and welcome back to the Archives. In all of galactic history, there have only really ever been two Sith Emperors, Darth Sidious and Valkorion. Valkorion, who is also known as the Emperor Vitiate. These two beings of the dark side happen to be among the most influential people in all of galactic history, if not the most influential people in their respective eras. Their similarities are vast, with both of them nearly destroying the Jedi and rising above all other Sith Lords in terms of power, but more important, supremacy. Yet, there is a certain disconnect between both of them. In many of Palpatine's studies, he would frequently make comments about the Dark Lords of times that had passed. He enlightens us by sharing his thoughts on their works, power, and their philosophies. Though despite all of the many similarities Sidious shares with Valkorion, one would be hard-pressed to find anything the Emperor of the modern day had to say about this powerful predecessor. Sidious is noticeably quiet regarding anything on Valkorion, which wouldn't be that distinguishable of a problem if Sidious didn't have plenty to say about Malgus instead. Palpatine intentionally avoids the topic of Valkorion, stemming from a point that Sidious never actually respected Valkorion, and more than this, likely thought that he was detrimental to the path of the Sith, and in the end, leads us to believe that Palpatine in secret despised the original Sith Emperor, the Dark Lord in the galaxy he was most like, the man who attained near total domination, immortality, and nearly ultimate power. So let's analyze this. There are several things that Sidious needed to accomplish in his life as a Sith, and to establish an immortal empire that he would be the permanent head of. He wanted to subjugate the galaxy and rule as long as possible. This was the innate desire for nearly every Sith Lord, as they all often believed that they had a cosmic right to rule by virtue of using the Force. In order to achieve this goal, Palpatine constantly experimented with strange powers and techniques, as well as made plenty use of super weapons and the vast resources of his empire. Sidious saw himself above everybody, not just because he was the most powerful being in the galaxy, but also because he believed he was the most intelligent. Of course, his ego isn't entirely unfounded, as Palpatine had manipulated galactic events for decades in order to achieve total galactic dominion. But we switch now over to Valkorion, somebody who was shockingly similar. Everything that we just now stated about Sidious also applies to him, except on a colossal scale. Vitiate too had manipulated galactic events, but it was not over the course of decades, but a time that exceeded over 1,000 years. He was obsessed with immortality, and he actually achieved this to some degree. Though Palpatine never achieved immortality in his own right, he was successful in galactic domination, whereas Valkorion was not. The two of these Sith are connected in a very important way. In the way of immortality, Valkorion was successful, and in the way of galactic dominion, Palpatine was successful, completing a coin that made up the culmination of the Sith. From this you would think that Darth Sidious would be a fanatic of Valkorion, constantly studying his life and trying to attain his secrets, but this never happened. Through researching both of their personalities and weaknesses, we have ascertained a few important differences in their characteristics, revealing why Sidious had an avoidance of Vitiate's knowledge. The most important thing is how each of these great Sith Lords viewed and perceived the dark side of the Force. Sidious had a very solid grasp on the role that the Force played in the galaxy and how the dark side was to be wielded. The Jedi believed the Force was ever present and was constantly flowing as an energy source through all life and death in the galaxy. But the Sith believe something similar with a key difference. They refuse to simply be used by the Force, or as Darth Plagueis would put it, subject themselves to the Force's enigmatic wills. The Sith seek domination over the Force, and to assert their command over it. They believe the power of the Force belongs to them. Yet, the nature of the dark side demands the Sith give something back in return, while the light only demands surrender. The dark demands much more. The relationship between a Sith and the dark side is a destructive symbiosis to which both parties agree upon. Again referencing Plagueis, he said that the dark side was a poison, a disease that no true Sith would ever wish to be cured of. Sidious believed this religiously. He believed religiously in the power of the dark side and those who wielded it and their supremacy. He never minded the cost of it when it came to the form of his body, his health, and his appearance. He knew that it would take a pound of flesh, but he was willing to give it up freely. He surrendered to the truth that was the dark side, when Darth Vitiate refused to. Valkorion and Vitiate believed that the Sith belonged to him and him alone. In the Dark Lord's final moments when he is facing down the spirit of everyone he ever wronged in Satele's mindscape, Valkorion states that he believes that the Force was his because of how much power he gained through it. Sidious was self-aware enough to openly state that all who gain power are afraid to lose that power. He himself experienced that fear firsthand. Yet Sidious acknowledged that it is a truth of the Sith that they fear to lose the power and that they must surrender to it. Valkorion and Vitiate, by contrast, believed that he was so far above the mortal emotions that even the Force itself, the powers of life and death, the piercing ways of fear, were too weak to touch him. To be Vitiate was to take the arrogance of Sidious and multiply it 1,000-fold. Sidious found this arrogance to be foolhardy, regardless of whatever power Vitiate achieved. Sidious worshipped the dark side, Vitiate worshipped himself. But the differences go further. How the two emperors viewed the Sith. Famously, Vitiate left the Sith Order after becoming dissatisfied with their philosophies. He believed that he had grown beyond the Sith, while Sidious is on record as saying that the Sith should always think on a monumental scale. Vitiate lost himself to madness, saying that he was above the Sith entirely. Darth Sidious was zealous for the way of the Sith, and galactically, Sidious was perhaps the perfect Sith. He embodies everything it means to be a Sith Lord. The rule of two was a means to an end, and Sidious used what he wanted of it and discarded the rest for the good of the Sith as a whole. Sidious's philosophical ideals align so strongly with the Sith that he just flat out hates anyone who does not see things his way. To Sidious, the Sith is the end-all be-all, the path to rising above all of the common and to destroy or build the galaxy as he sees fit. To believe that you could grow beyond the Sith was madness to Sidious. Sidious called the hubris of Vitiate to be dubious at this point, and this is why he draws his attention towards the general of Vitiate in Darth Malgus instead. Malgus was disillusioned with the Sith Empire because they had lost the ways of what it meant to be a Sith. The Dark Council always wanted to play politics, undermining everything that Malgus was trying to accomplish, everything that he sacrificed to become the greatest warrior possible. They abandoned the goals of the Sith after handing back Coruscant after Malgus sacked it, taking the home of the Jedi for his own. It was this moment where Malgus turned away from the Empire, but never the Sith. We are of the belief that had Sidious been around during this era, he most certainly would have sided with Malgus, and a schism would have resulted. But yet there is another reason for Sidious's distaste for Vitiate, and we believe it is the strongest of all. When analyzing the endgame of Sidious and Vitiate, their very goals, we come to an impasse, a divergence of philosophy completely. There is one key line that Valkorion delivers. He says that he seeks to destroy and rebuild the galaxy, but that in doing though, he desires universal peace. This goes against the first line of the Sith Code, that peace is a lie. Sidious would oppose this outlook, even if in Revenge of the Sith he told Anakin that if the Sith ruled that they would have peace. This was a manipulation. Do not be deceived, my friends. The kind of peace that Valkorion desired was not the peace that anyone would have wanted. Valkorion sought the peace that lied in emptiness, the dead silence of nothing. Valkorion wanted ultimate power and to become a god within the Force so that he could literally rend the universe apart. Darth Sidious is pure evil. Valkorion was purely insane. His mind had grown so mad and so twisted that he desired to eliminate life, to drain existence of all matter, to create a universe of nothing. In 2017, in the Lord Vader comic series, we find Sidious reprimanding Vader for constantly killing high-ranking Imperial officers. To end this, Sidious has a famous quote saying, "I do not wish to rule over a galaxy of the dead." Emperors are nothing without people to subjugate and rule, and the Empire is nothing without this either. Sidious despised Valkorion because of his views on the universe itself. It's probable that Palpatine does not delve into Valkorion's secrets because he wants nothing of Vitiate's madness. The nature of Valkorion's immortality is a vile existence. The Emperor had to sacrifice everything it meant to be alive. He could no longer feel, taste, or smell. He no longer had emotions except for craving power and the fear of losing it. He was in constant, excruciating pain with no way to numb his senses. And in order to achieve this immortality, he did something horrific by consuming the force energy of 8,000 Sith Lords that trusted him, with the entirety of his home planet destroyed as a result of this. He desecrated his home world, in fact. He left it with no life, no wind, no color, no temperature, and no force. It was a giant void with nothing inside of it. If any force sensitive were to stand on the wasteland that was Nathema for too long, they would lose their mind to the same insanity that Vitiate lost his. Any Sith who saw Nathema and experienced the aftermath of Vitiate's handiwork all said that it was an abomination. A passage from the Revan novel explains the thoughts of Lord Scourge when he saw Nathema, the homeworld of Vitiate. Scourge was well acquainted with death. He had no trouble understanding massacres and even mass slaughter. Death and destruction unleashed powerful emotions like fear, suffering, and hatred. They fueled the power of the dark side. But what happened on Nathema was different, and it disturbed him to a deep and a profound way. Everything on Nathema had simply been snuffed out, extinguished so completely that it ceased to have any meaning or purpose. It was a vacuum of existence, a blight on the natural order. Destroying your enemies, even destroying a planet, was understandable. But this wasn't simple destruction, it was annihilation, obliteration. This powerful passage explains exactly why Sidious was against Valkorion, and why of all the Sith, he thought he was a madman, not worth studying because of how far he disrespected the dark side itself. Vitiate created such a disturbance that it caused the Sith to rally alongside the Jedi to destroy their former Emperor. And thus, my friends, this is why Darth Sidious never respected and actually looked down upon Valkorion, Vitiate, Tenebrae. But thank you, my friends, for joining us in today's Holocron. We definitely want to know your thoughts on this wild topic. And what are your thoughts on Sidious's view on Vitiate? Were you shocked to see how many differences they had, and how the two most powerful Sith Emperors turned out to be two wildly different beasts? Thank you so much for watching the channel today, my friends, and may the Force be with you.